Hello YouTube, Gorod Radio Mosky here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. Continuing on with my German series of beer reviews here, with me having a very good selection of that in Heidelberg in Germany. But today we're going to visit quite a famous brewery again from Munich, and I've done 2 reviews from these guys so far. So today we're going to have a little look at the Paulaner Salvator, and this is a beer that has quite a bit of a reputation behind it, from which you'll discover in a minute if you stick with me for the video. But this guy is one I'd never actually encountered in Scotland, which I'm very surprised at since I've come to Germany and learned the reputation of this beer. But as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a little bit of a history of the beer, tell you a little bit about where it's from, all that sort of thing. But as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go on towards the latter part of the video and you will catch that. But the name Paulaner is obtained from the Italian monastic order of Paolo, which settled in the heart of Munich in the early 17th century. Now in 1634, the order of Paulaner monks began brewing beer in the Au, which proved to be the foundation stone for the Paulaner Brewery as it is today. And apparently the monks were forced to fast on only bread and water during their Lenten period, but they reasoned that beer could be produced as a liquid bread and thus they wouldn't break their Lenten promise. But this liquid bread became the world's first Doppelbock, known today as the Paulaner Salvator. This guy here, so quite a famous beer I'm reviewing for you today. But the monks sold this beer to the population of the city for a small charge, and it spread very quickly, much to the alarm of the secular brewers, of course, those who weren't attached to the monastic orders and things like that within Munich. But this letter of protest that they produced in 1634 is deemed to be the first recognition of the brewery's existence, and the aim of the other brewers was to prevent the public sale of the Paulaner Salvator. But the monks only in fact received an unlimited right of sale from the electoral prince 150 years later, and because of this the first mug produced of the strong beer every year is given to the political leader of Bavaria, and this is known as the Salvator Probe, or the Salvator tasting if you like, and you can see this on the label of the bottle here. But this ceremony that goes on in Munich when this happens also marks the beginning of Lent in the city. Now the Paulaner beer is brewed according to the Bavarian purity law of 1516, which you'll probably have heard of, and it applies all the way throughout Germany now, known as the Reinheitsgebot. But this is the oldest food law in the world, and as you'll probably know, it only permits the use of malt, hops, water and yeast for brewing. But because of this, Paulaners say that they only use the best summer barley with the best viability values, starch and protein content, and the best aromatic hops from the Hallertau region. This is a region in Bavaria known as the I think it's the largest hop producing region in the world, of course, so it's quite cool there. And they also used untouched glacier water from a depth of 240 meters in all of their beers, so a really good water source with Paulaner, of course, there. But they also have an exclusive yeast cultivation, which is actually particularly pure, and it's produced in a unique yeast propagation system. And Paulaner, as you'll probably know as well, are actually one of only 6 breweries who provide the Oktoberfest beer for the famous Oktoberfest in Munich, dating from 1810. I believe that the criteria for this, for Oktoberfest, is that the beer has to be brewed within the city limits of Munich there. But today they're actually the largest brewery in Bavaria and the 8th best selling brewery in all of Germany. And the brewery also belongs to the Brau Holding International AG group, which is actually partly owned by Heineken, a very sort of powerful and influential group in brewing circles in Germany. They own quite a few of the breweries that I've reviewed for you so far, or they have a share in them and things like that. But to tell you about the other Paulaner beers, you can get the Münchner Helles, the Original Münchner Dunkellager, Lichte, Dunkel and Naturtrüb Hefeweizens, the Salvator, which is a Doppelbock, this guy here of course, they have the Haus Original, the Premium Pils, both of which are Pils beers obviously. They have their Keller beer and their Nocheberger, both of which are Keller beers, their Oktoberfest Weizen and Märzen, and they also have a couple of other Märzen beers as well. And one thing I learned about this brewery actually is that they have brew pubs all over the world now, in Cape Town and things like that, so they've all got different beers and they brew beers in-house as far as I know there. But let's get on with the tasting of this guy. I'll bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the bottle here. I'll just, there's my guy there. But as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, this is the Salvator Probe. This is one of the monks basically giving the brew to the sort of Bavarian head of parliament or head of state, or like, I'm not quite sure exactly what it would have been called in this time, but you can see it there, and it's quite a cool label that they've kept through tradition. And this is a slightly different Paulaner bottle cap that's on this one. This is a gold one rather than a white one, as you will see on the other ones here. But this is a really cool beer, and I'm quite pleased to be reviewing this guy for you. It's a 7.9% Doppelbock, as you might have guessed. And as I mentioned, it's the first beer that the brewery ever produced, and one that is the Salvator name apparently. One thing I was reading about this is that the Salvator name was actually patented in 1896, which is really cool. So this is the only beer you'll find in the world, I think, that's called Salvator. But let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting. I'm quite looking forward to doing this one for you, as I've mentioned various times in this video. So there we are, a good bit of smoke on the opening, as you can see, and let's just get it out. Nice dark mahogany Doppelbock colour, as you can see. It's going to have a nice bit of head on it as well. Let's just get the last of this guy out. Beautiful looking beer, in fact, and I can smell the fruit off of this guy as I just put it into the glass. As you can see, a sort of two finger, definitely a tan head I would say on this one, or a beigey head actually. If I hold this guy over to the light, it's actually a really nice sort of ruby and mahogany colour. A lot of big bubbles coming up from the bottom there and sticking to the side of the glass as well. Really attractive looking beer. One of the more red Doppelbocks I've seen actually. A really nice ruby mahogany colour. But in terms of the aroma here, actually a very, very fruity smelling beer, in fact. But there's a lot of brown sugar and roasted malts in there as well, but it is a really fruity, sweet beer. I'm surprised at how much fruit is coming out of this guy, but definitely a lot of sort of plums and raisins in there, maybe even a little bit sweeter. It won't be raspberries and things like that, it's definitely dark fruits, but a really sort of quite pungent fruity aroma to this one. You can see the head is just fading away on this guy. It's become a bit more bubbly rather than foamy over the last little while, but a really attractive looking beer, and it smells really good as well. If you get one of these, just take a little moment and enjoy the fruity aroma of this. This is the only Doppelbock I've encountered that has such a fruity aroma to it, but let's give it a taste and see how we get on. Quite a complex one, not as fruity as the aroma actually would make you think. At first, you've got a big sort of bready aroma, you've got a big bready flavour coming towards you, and then that has a little bit of caramel mixed in, but in this guy I think the caramel is actually quite subtle. There's actually a little bit, there's a lot of roasted character in this one. That's quite prominent with this guy, and it's sort of bordering on the line where you're getting coffee flavours on it. Very, very roasted. I think there is a little bit of sort of cereal spice in there as well, mixed in with the coffee, but you're starting with that bready malt with a little bit of caramel in it, but the coffee flavours come out soon after, and you've got just a little bit of spicy character in there mixing in quite well. It's quite a complex one, this. Yeah, the fruits are coming out just on the end. You're getting just a little subtle fruity flavour on this after the coffee subsides a little bit. On the aftertaste, you're getting just a little bit of that roasted character coming out, maybe just a little bit of bread, but the fruit isn't really staying in it, I would say. Now the fruit is actually just a little bit, when you take it in again, if you take a bigger gulp of it, you get the fruit sort of lingering on the tongue there, but it's definitely a really quite a prominent coffee one. It's a lot less sweet than the aroma gives off, I would say. It's actually just slightly bitter on the finish, and the malts are the main thing that linger in here. The coffee malt with a little bit of the roasted spice actually. It's a really complex one. I can see why this was so popular back in the day, but it's a really, really good beer. Yeah, like I say, a nice caramel bready flavour coming out first, quickly replaced by sort of coffee with a little bit of cereal spice in there. Quite an interesting. Then you've just got a little bit of smoothing out, and you're getting just a subtle bit of like dark fruits like raisins and stuff like that. And then in the aftertaste, the fruits are lingering just a little bit, but I think you're starting to get the coffee and cereal flavour coming out just a little bit. No, I don't think there's any chocolate flavour in this guy. Mainly it has a little bit of coffee, but it could be chocolate mixed in with a little bit of cereal spice that gives the impression of coffee. Of that, I'm not quite certain, but it's that spicy, dark coffee, chocolatey malts are really mixing together, and that makes it quite interesting. It's quite unique in that sense. This guy isn't like the other Doppelbocks I've had before. This guy is something completely unique. But yeah, in terms of the mouth on this one, I wouldn't hesitate to say this is a full-bodied beer, but it's very smooth and a little creamy, I would say, in fact, or oily. I'm not quite sure exactly how to describe it. It's sort of a mix even in between a sort of creamy and oily mouthfeel. And there is a good bit of alcohol warmth once it starts to go down. I'm getting nice and warm in here, in fact, but it's actually just a little bit dry on the finish as well. So this guy is really interesting, a really unique take on the Doppelbock style of beer, of course. So if you get the chance, give this guy a try. The oldest Doppelbock in the world, and you know, even for that simple fact, it is a beer that really is worth trying, and it's a really beautiful one that doesn't disappoint, in my opinion. You know, give this guy a go, and I'm sure many of you watching this video will have tried this guy yourself, so please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer, and I hope that my flavours that I'm pointing out are sort of making sense to you and stuff like that, and are fairly similar to what you see. But as I always say, beer is subjective, so everyone will taste different things and stuff like that, but overall this guy's an excellent Doppelbock that's very sort of easily available, if you like. So if you want a solid Doppelbock that you can get your hands on, this is the guy to go for. As I did with my last video for the Schmucker Brewery, there are lots of really good Doppelbocks around. This guy is no exception, but it certainly is a very unique one. So if you haven't tried it, go and give it a go and see what you think of it. I highly recommend you try this beer, and anything from the Paulaner Brewery you're not going to be disappointed from. One of Germany's premier breweries, and quite rightly so in my opinion. But thanks for watching my beer reviews. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it somewhat informative. Let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Thanks for watching again, and I shall catch you soon. Cheers.